welcome to my canvas, Braden's Canvas. Thanks for tuning in. This is actually the first video I've ever really made to upload to YouTube, so probably there's going to be a lot of mistakes. Maybe the audio doesn't sound perfect, or maybe anything could just go wrong at any point, but I'm going to try my best. And ultimately, here, what I'm trying to do is have some fun. And if you're along for the ride and you also have fun, then I'm doing something right. Please leave in the comments any ideas you might have to improve, or tips, so that I can learn to make better videos for next time. So this is not always going to be perfect, but you know we're just here to have some fun at the end of the day. So yeah, so what are we going to do? Basically, this video is going to center around some drawing, and we're going to try to make it simple but also informative, and maybe you'll learn some things that you can also apply to your art, and maybe I can learn some things to help teach some better art. So yeah, without further ado, I would like to show you my setup here and kind of like where we're going with this. So as you can see, I have in front of me here a drawing of a dog of a friend of mine, and they requested this picture to be drawn. And well, I thought it could be a nice opportunity to maybe explain what I'm doing and how I do it. And because sometimes that's not really shown. You don't really get to often see what is an artist doing, how do they do it step by step. There might be some good videos out there teaching you how to do these things, but for the most part, most people aren't seeing that. Most people, they kind of look at art as a bit of like a magic or something. Like you have to be an insanely talented person to make art. But that's simply not true. Anybody can make art if they give it a little practice and you learn some techniques. And I must say, I've learned a lot of techniques over the years of making art that I had to learn the hard way. And I would have loved somebody to sit down with me and just kind of give me some of the things that work, that can make things much simpler, So that's what I'm going to try to do here. But before I get into it, I just want to explain kind of what am I trying to do here. And I'll start by saying the paper. So I'm actually painting on this paper. It's actually kind of gray, so maybe you can see that, and it's quite thick too, so you really can't see through it. It's very sturdy paper. And what I love about this is how the gray acts as sort of a neutral tone. So rather than drawing on a white paper where we start with a really bright surface, we kind of go in the middle between a white and a black, and we settle on a gray. And this has some really nice properties, which I can explain to you as I get in. But one of the other first things to mention here is that I've already taken the time to sketch out a rough outline. And, I started this already maybe a little bit like an hour ago, just to speed up the process, because as this can be some challenge to take a picture, as you can see right above me, and turn it into an outline. There are many useful tricks to doing this. The easiest of which would be tracing, and I'm not opposed to tracing. I think tracing has a good place in making art. And, if you are struggling with transferring a reference image to a basic outline like I have here, then I don't see why you shouldn't be able to trace. Ultimately, you want to get better at drawing, so relying on tracing all of the time will just make it hard to be able to do it any other way. But maybe that's okay. It's you play at your own rules when it comes to this. We're doing this for fun, not to impress anybody or to impress ourselves even, but to learn and to have fun. So use whatever method works for you, and as long as you can get kind of the results that you're looking for, use whatever method you want. What I've done here is I've actually taken the reference image and printed it out to the same size as my sheet here, and then I look at one and place it to the other. And I can do this now fairly well because I practiced it a lot. And I still kind of, it's not going to be perfect, but there can be something nice about it not being perfect. You know, I don't necessarily want it to be a photorealistic copy. I want there to be some variance and, you know, some human touch. So yeah, without further ado, I'll just say what I've got going on for my tools. So what I really like to do is use pencil when I'm doing this stage. And you can see here, it says 4B on the tip. And 4B is probably my favorite pencil to use. And what it means is that it's just the grading of the hardness of the graphite, which is the what people call often the lead, which is, it's not actually lead, it's actually graphite, which is a form of charcoal, or it's essentially like carbon, which has been graded to a certain softness. And 4B is a really perfect softness for me because I can variate the tones by pressing harder or by lightening. So I can actually get like very dark black almost with a 4B, but I can also go really soft and get a very light tone. So I recommend 4B pencils. They're personally my favorite. The other thing I have in terms of graphite is a nice mechanical pencil. And this mechanical pencil is great because it always has a thin line. So if I need any little thin lines and I've worn down my pencil and I don't want to sharpen it, a mechanical pencil is really good for that. And the last like pencil type thing is this white charcoal pencil. And I'm actually, you know, quite a fan of these. But you know, they only really work when you're using a toned or colored paper like I am here. Obviously, if you have a white paper and you use a white charcoal, it's not going to show up, right? So what I really appreciate about toned paper is that I can use things like this white charcoal to bring out some of the highlights. And if you look at my reference picture up above here, you'll notice that there is quite a lot of white in the fur. And so I think what's going to happen is it's going to really make a lot of the thing pop, which can be really fun and really exciting. So by doing this toned paper, I can play with the darks and I can play with the lights, and I can allow the paper to do a lot of the work for me. Especially if I look at my reference, I say in the background, there's a lot of gray. So if my paper was white, I would have to do a lot of work to make that all kind of gray. But because the paper is already gray, I don't have to do as much. I can really let the paper do a lot of the work. So that's just why I'm doing it this way. And well, you can start to see. So how am I going to approach this after I've made this like very rough outline? I would say it's not always the case, but how I like to normally work is by going and finding the darkest darks in the picture, and sometimes even also adding the lightest lights. And it might be in this a little bit tricky because there's so much really black shadows and fur and stuff. But, you know, if I look at this carefully, I can see that there's quite a strong shadow in the ear area and around the face, as well as the nose and the mouth. And so I think that's where I'll start. And I also really want to make sure that I consider the direction of which I go, so that I'm not going to be smudging my hand against stuff I've already done. And because I'm right-handed, if my hand is resting here on the portrait, I don't really want to have stuff really colored in here, because I'll just end up putting my hand right on it and I'll be drawing things and I'll be smudging it. So what I like to always do, because I'm right-handed, is to start from the top left corner and work diagonally downwards so that I never have to put my hand on top of something that I've already drawn. And this will just make things so much more clean. So that's my tip. If you're left-handed, maybe you just do it the opposite way. Then it's the same idea, it's just flipped. So consider how you want to do that. Of course, it's not a rule. If I want to do something over here at the beginning, fine. I just would recommend that you try to generally stay in this directional flow because it's going to help you really preserve some of the stuff that you end up making. Yeah. Now, additionally, you'll notice that I have masking tape on the border, and this is there just first primarily because I want to put this down to the table. So this really helps keep it in place for the video. But additionally, it's going to keep the borders really clean. And when I peel off the paper at the end, it's going to have such a clean aesthetic at the end. So yeah, without further ado, I'm just going to get going. And let's see how long this video ends up being. I don't really know. Maybe it's going to be 3 hours long and you'll tune out already. I don't know. But if you stick with me, enjoy and try and learn some things, I'll make some comments as I go. So yeah, with animals, especially dogs and cats, the fur tends to grow in a specific direction. And when we're doing any kind of animal, and you also do this with humans to a certain degree, want to kind of follow the strokes of the hair. So we can see here that in the center, actually, if we look at the reference picture, the hair kind of goes up the forehead. So without really worrying too much about specifically copying the picture, I am interested to find out where the hair is moving and just put in a layer. And keeping kind of control over how long these hairs are, because they are quite long around the eyes here. But as they get down further to the nose area, they become kind of small. And additionally, they also change direction a bit. So just trying to be aware of that. And by doing this kind of beginning step, I'm not trying to finish this area. I'm just trying to establish the rough look. And, when I get a little bit kind of through an area, I often will like to switch what I'm doing. But for the sake of this, maybe, I'm just working, as I said, top left down. And I've established this eye area. And I'm going to leave it now and kind of work on this ear before I get too far along. The ear is really dark, so I'm just going to go for it, We can always erase later, We don't have to get too concerned about making mistakes. Because really, there isn't anything that we can really do that we can't undo. So there's something that I don't like about this that I might consider a mistake, I can just erase it. It's okay. So I'm still following the direction of the hairs. But as they get higher up here, they start to get a little wild. And the great thing about an animal is that their owner might know exactly what the dog looks like or the cat or the animal. But like anyone else can just see it as a dog, and it's probably a really cute dog, but it's not like a person where it's like I painted my aunt and it didn't really look like her, and then all my family members, they were like, yeah, it doesn't really look like Auntie Auntie Karen or something like that, but good try. No, with a dog, with a cat, it's like, yeah, it's got the right fur pattern. It looks right. So don't worry too much. Don't worry. It's gonna be okay. So I've established some of the darks here now, and I know it doesn't look like a lot right now, but we're getting somewhere. This always happens in every painting or drawing. There's a stage where it feels like it just looked so bad. And one has to either say, I'm going to keep going, or I'm just going to stop. And I can look at this right now and I can say, I probably should stop. This is not looking good, you know. But I have to push through a little bit because I have to believe that I can pull this together. And there's always that stage in almost everything. Even just like learning anything new that you haven't really done a lot of, or even if you are good at something, there are points where you're thinking to yourself, is what I'm doing good? Am I good at this, or is this bad? Like, yeah, you can ask these questions, but you know what? Like, it doesn't really matter. If something looks bad right now and you continue doing it, chances are it'll still end up being pretty good if you just keep working on it. So that's all I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to keep working on it. So I'm actually like moving somewhat along. But like what I'm sort of feeling like right now is that the eyes, they need some work. The eyes are important here. So I'm kind of now starting to define that. And I'm just looking very carefully at my reference to try to see if I can make sense of the shapes of the shadows. Because that's what I do when I do stuff like this. I really try to simplify the image rather than looking at it as I'm drawing a dog. Mostly, especially at the beginning, I'm trying to look at it like it's a collection of shapes of light and dark. And that's what I'm really focusing on at the beginning, to make sure that I can find those darkest darks and establish a shape. So especially like around the eye here, you can kind of look at the reference picture and see that there's a sort of defined shadow area that has like a distinct shape. So around the snout, we're not as dark, and I could probably try to go in really dark, but I think it's better to build things up a little bit slowly. So when I'm shading, I always try to start with the darkest darks, and then I do a little bit of some of the midtones, which in this case is a lot of the paper is already sort of the midtone, if you understand. So I'm going for like the second darkest darks. You feel me? Right. So then we also have kind of like this dark area down here. Now, something fun. Okay. I've done a little bit now of the darks, and I would like to make some of the white charcoal to create a little bit of an effect. So, one thing I'll say is that I know that the background is actually quite a bit brighter in its value than his head, because his head is black and the rocks in the background have a lot of light on them. So they actually start approaching white pretty fast. So I'm going to try and sort of frame the head with some of this white. And I'm not going to get too fussed with making the rocks, because then we'll be here all day if I put in every rock. But I'm just going to get sort of a rough texture to give the feeling of something a little more organic in the background. Now, I'm not going in super hard yet, but I am giving it something. And I'm giving it my own something too. I'm not trying to make it perfect. I'm just trying to make it pop a bit. Do you see what that does already? You know, it was looking a little bit like a little questionable until I added this white. And we're gonna add more as we go. But I thought you all deserve something, and I also deserve to have a little reward now. Yes, so you know, just in the same way that I have done the fur in a certain direction, you can see how the direction that I'm doing the charcoal has importance. If I switch directions, it's pretty noticeable. So what I like to do, if I'm going to try and make a little gradual change by crossing the directions that I'm going. It's up to you. How do you want it to look? Do you want them all the same direction? Do you want it to be a bit smooth? Or not smooth? Maybe you want it to be really rough. I'm kind of liking somewhere in between. But that already makes it just come alive a little bit more. You know, and we're just really getting started here. Yeah. But you can see there's not a lot of highlights on his face. It's quite dark. But we're going to try and use the white, not really intensely, but you know, I can see here on the nose that there's a little bit, and I'm going to create little hairs. And luckily this charcoal is pretty sharp. I'm just going to follow what I've already done a little bit. It's going to create little, almost kind of gray, but not, you know, little hairs here. just like copying sort of what I've already laid out. And if you really zoom in on the reference picture, you can actually see tiny little white hairs. See how that is affecting things already? There's also a little bit of a lighter tone on its nose. So we're just gonna play with that a bit. Now, the charcoal, the white charcoal, and the graphite pencil, they don't really mix that well. So you kind of have to work with them individually. But now you can see that I can, because I've made some room with the darks, I can plop the whites in. Yep. So how we just continue to do this till we get what we like out of it. I'm honestly thinking I would really like to make some fast videos too. You know, this is pretty slow video, but it's kind of nice maybe for some of you. If you're tired and you just want to relax with somebody else doing some drawing, you don't really want to do too much, then this could be relaxing. But if some of you are trying to like follow along with me as I'm doing this, it might be a little hard. So what I just did there, I'm not sure I like yet, but I think, you know, we're just going in super light right now. And well, it's gonna start to kind of build up. So I'm gonna have to go over things again. It's like kind of like, it's a bit analogous to like finding your way if you're lost. You know, when you start a painting, it's like you've been dropped into the middle of nowhere and you don't know where you are, and you have to like start walking around a bit to see if you can like recognize anything that you've seen before, or like in this case, like just sketching a bit to like find the values that might make sense, and like not doing anything too deliberately, just seeing what happens if you kind of start to break the shapes of light and dark down a bit. Just like what I'm doing here. Mostly. I'm not getting too committed to anything. Everything can be erased. And I'm working generally across the entire drawing. Although I did start from the left to the right now, I am definitely kind of breaking my rule a bit. But that's okay. It's pretty small, and I can keep my hand off most of the drawing without smudging anything. And that's really the main reason why I do that. You know, I'm also really thinking about the format of these videos, like how do people want to watch this? Like, is it boring that I show you everything, or do people have an interest to see like a much more sped up thing and maybe like one or two kind of main concepts, or do they not want to learn anything, they just want to watch me and the commentary is distracting, or what do people find interesting, you know? Like for me, I think what's interesting is to explain what I'm doing so that it's not just yeah, so it's not confusing, or so that it's not reducing what I'm doing here to like some sort of magic, so that it like brings clarity to the process so that anyone can do it. Because I really believe that anyone can do this. It's just what are the techniques that make it easier. So, but you know, we've started to see things kind of pulling together. I think there's still so much to do, right? Like the darks, right? But I want to rush it. I want to just take it slow, take it easy. You know, it's too much things these days are going too fast. Just gotta slow down and take some time to really analyze what it is that I'm looking at. It's a bit like meditation, you know, at least for me. Just taking it slow, going at my pace. What I really love about doing this kind of stuff, portraits especially, but also landscapes and other things, is that one gets to really learn about what it is that they're drawing. Like, I've drawn enough dogs to know kind of what does a dog's ear look like, but when I really start to get in close and trying to understand what I'm looking at, I gain a new perspective every time. Like, how does this dog's ear flop, and what direction does hair grow on it? Questions I would never normally ask, but when I start to think more about it, it's really interesting. The reason why I'm not just making this all black is because I still want to create like texture. I want that, I want each stroke to go in the direction of the hair so that we get like a more genuine feeling. If I just painted it or drew it all dark, then it would not look furry. But by kind of quickly brushing in each hair, we get like a furriness to it. You'll notice I'm not focused on making it super accurate, like each hair isn't in the exact same location. It's more of like just pretty general at this point. Because again, like it doesn't matter to anyone except for the owner, who might say, "Oh, my dog's hair is a little more like this," and well, cool, yeah, but maybe that's just on that day. Like maybe on the next day that he gets a portrait photographed at the lake, his hair is curled differently, so we don't lose anything to recognize the dog when the hair is a little more loose in some areas and more accurate in others. So no one's gonna say anything, and no one's gonna know. The main thing is that we just get the values right. now we're getting somewhere. You know, this is we're past the point of, oh my, it looks so bad. It looks like I need to give up. No, like we can just keep going with this. It's gonna be fine. But what we do need to try to do, bring in some more highlights because we want that to pop. So, well, one thing I can say is it needs much more brightness where the fur is actually white, and that is mostly over here. So now I'm gonna try and go a bit harder, a bit more like whew. And I did mention that it's kind of hard to mix these graphites with the charcoal, the white charcoal, but it's not impossible. It's just gonna create like a little bit kind of smudgy gray, which is okay with a little bit, and you'll see what I mean. We just need to make sure we use it sparingly and that we allow the gray of the paper to do the work, not so much mixing the white and the black to make a gray. It's gonna look a little contrastful, too much contrast, at least for what I want to go for on this particular painting. So that's the thing. I might say something, ooh, I don't like that, or oh, that doesn't really work, or something like that. Well, that's subjective. Like, it doesn't work for me on this picture, but it might work for me on another picture. I might like that. And it might work for you all the time. I don't know. You make up the rules on that sort of stuff. Some things are subjective. Some things are just, what do I like? You can sometimes even go so far to say, well, I like when my portraits look really wonky, like a Picasso or something. That's fine. A lot of people think Picasso is really great. Well, what's interesting about Picasso, which some of you may already know, is that Picasso was actually pretty good at drawing realistically when he was younger. Well, also when he was older, but he just didn't do it as much. But when he was an art student in his 20s, he only really painted realistically. Like, he didn't really have this abstract style at all until he was much later in his life. So people say, "Oh, I don't think it's very good art. Picasso is just he's too far away from skill." Well, that's not true because he was very skilled. He just didn't really like to do that kind of realistic painting until he got older. So keep that in mind next time you look at modern art. You can say, "Oh, yeah, well, I don't really understand it, and therefore I don't really like it." And this artist, like my 5-year-old, could do that. Well, yeah, it could be that your 5-year-old can do that, but it also took that artist probably a long time to do other things that your 5-year-old can't do. So it's not always about what can this look like, how realistic is it. It's also about style. It's about message. It's about so many things that are independent of skill. So we shouldn't be too focused on skill. more focused on the entire thing collectively. If it does something interesting. So I actually don't really know what this dog's name was again, but I feel like if I did know, that could really help me to make this drawing better, you know, because then I would be more like sort of, let's say, intimate with what I'm doing. You know, I like I know the story behind this portrait. I know who that dog is, you know. But I can say that I have met this dog one time. I'm pretty sure. So there's something to that then. And I always really liked when I'm doing a portrait, not just animals, but most especially with humans, that I have some connection to that entity, because then I can really feel like, oh yes, this is how their nose is, or this is how they look when they turn their head this way, or you know, gives it more life if I know something about it, if I know them, or if I can see them in that light. So, but we are getting somewhere, I must say. The thing that's maybe throwing me off the most right now is just the eyes are not quite right, and but we're gonna fix that. So one thing is like getting it just right with. I'm going to switch over to a smaller pencil because this takes some precision now. This is, if any area will be precise, should be the eyes, I think. Because the eyes, they say so much about the animal. Same with like humans. The eyes are most definitely the most important aspect of a portrait, most of the time. At least mine. I think they really are so important to get right. So I'm not afraid to also erase a little bit. And now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a little time slowly getting the shading right. So you can already see that's a bit better. It's a bit hard to say that I think it's maybe a bit tricky to see in the lighting. Can we see that? I'm really trying to work on improving the lighting overall. I'm unsure what's best, but I just wanted to get a video out into the world. So that's what we're doing. I'm gonna just make some little dots. And I'm gonna reduce these dots to just 2 rows to make it easier on me. And that's what you're allowed to do as an artist. You can say, don't really like this about what I'm seeing, so I'm going to simplify it. Just going to take the best things about this, and the rest, I don't need it, you know? So, yeah, it's going okay, right? I don't know. What do you guys think? I think maybe like the eye. It's funny. At least I can see on one eye. It's a bit droopy. I'm also thinking one thing to do is to do like a live stream. I don't know if, would anybody be interested in a live stream like on Twitch or something? I don't know if there's really much of a community for that on Twitch, but I think maybe some people could be interested, you know. It's not video games. But then again, like there are a lot of people who probably would love to draw, but they don't have like someone to like guide them, and they don't have anyone to teach them for free. Like I don't mind doing that for sometimes. But let's see. So I'm really still trying to build up the darks, you know, like you can see it's getting darker and darker. But I believe it can still get darker. And it can also get lighter too in certain areas. One thing that I sometimes do if I'm not sure if like an area is darker, like here where I'm smoothly going over it, squinting my eyes, and I look at my reference and I look at the drawing and I say, okay, like it's actually much darker there actually than what I have right now. So let's just again slowly build up to that. And then I'll just show you now what I'm thinking of doing also is like pulling out some highlights by erasing, which is not always great technique, but can like help to like redefine some areas if I've made them too dark and they're just slightly off, or I can also like create another layer of fur texture and then I can go over that again and it creates like these like layers kind of fur, and that's like how it is in reality so many ways, right? Have these kind of like undercoats and overcoat in the fur, and we can actually create like a really, maybe realistic isn't the best word, but like true to form texture, right? It's true to the real form. It might not look like a photo or real life, but we're mimicking it at least much more than just doing it in one layer. Right? That's cool. That's what I like. So now we're approaching like a truly black here that I've used both pencils and I've gone over multiple times to achieve this very dark. I would say it's a black. And I can spend a lot of time doing this to everywhere that I think needs it, which is actually a lot. We're just gonna go slow. Have fun, right? Like starting to kind of find some detail moments where like the hair becomes small, right? So that's a point where I know, okay, I've moved to something that I kind of see potential in now. And even this area where I've already gone over, I can come in with a harder stroke and put even more fur-like texture in. That is fun. Now this is where the mechanical pencil is really so nice because we can consistently get these very thin hairs. I don't have to worry about this other pencil which gets very fat very quickly. And it's really not super nice for getting these very thin hairs. So the buckle is interesting because I don't have to do any more fur. I can do like a different surface, which I'm still treating like it's shapes of dark and light, but I don't have to do all these like little hair motions, which keeps it interesting, you know, like do something different. And that's like if you get tired of doing a particular thing or texture or spot in the drawing, like just switch it. Do a different part. Do the buckle instead of the hair, you know, because it'll keep it interesting for you. I mean, thank you to those who are still watching this now. Like seriously, must have been interesting to you on some level. So let me know in the comments if you came this far. And let me know in the comments if you want more, or let me know if you want me to work on something specific. Like, I don't mind. Would love to work on, you know, some of the things that maybe you are finding challenging in your own art. I can say for me, I love to do many different things. So I'm not stuck on portraits or animals or anything specific really. I just love to learn and explore new things. So that's where I'm at, and where I hope that this can also be that kind of thing. Definitely taking it really quick here. And I think also when I'm talking, I'm not saying that I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing, because I am, but I'm less like, well, I'm trying to think of the right word. Like, I'm just like more carefree, I guess, right now, which is good. But if I was on my own and I was getting paid to do this, I might like really be like super picky about everything, which I'm really not right now. I feel quite relaxed, carefree about it. Like, it's kind of doesn't matter if it's perfect or not. But I think, we're getting close on this. And I will say it's definitely not the best drawing I've ever made, but it's also not the worst. So that's okay. Maybe a good first video. Don't take it too seriously. And learn some things, right? Have fun. And I hope wherever you are today, if you're watching this, you also just are having some fun, either drawing along or just listening. Just make sure you are also having fun and enjoying yourself. But I can say I think we're almost done. Well, that's probably not true exactly, but because like I can keep going on this a long time, I think. But I think that at a certain point it doesn't get better, it just gets more detailed, which could be better. But it can also distract when there's too much detail. One thing is I would really like to see is a little more dark right there. Yes. And let's just maybe move down a bit. So you can see what it's going to look like down here. Use some more white. I love it when I get to use the charcoal, the white charcoal, because it just makes things pop all of a sudden. It's that contrast, right? The light and the dark. It's a bit like life, right? In the sense that when we have dark times, the light times or the really great times, they just pop. You know, if we only ever had great experiences in life, I mean, in theory, it sounds great, but if we never had to struggle for anything, if we never had any problems at all, like things would not be as interesting. They wouldn't feel as valuable when we have those times that are really good. And it's just the same thing with the art, you know, like if I don't add the white, if I don't add the dark, like I don't really have a drawing. It looks pretty flat. And I don't want that. I want some pop. And I mean, this fur is just wild. It's going in all different directions. I can't really keep track of it all. So I'm just looking at the largest shapes or the directions of the fur, and I'm just kind of, again, trying to find my way. I think like it's kind of good enough. Obviously, it's extremely loose at this point. But what that can do is serve to draw attention towards the parts that are nicely detailed, like the face. So maybe it's not the most interesting area, this sort of like underbelly. And by like making it look loose, we don't really bring so much of the attention there. It feels like more of like a background element. So we can use that as like a tool to tell the viewer where to look. And I find that super interesting that you have the power to alter how somebody looks at something just through simple techniques like that. Well, of course, it doesn't look exactly the same. I guess when I compare the two, I can really notice that this muzzle here is also, it's two things. Too it's too wide, so like I'm gonna erase up to there. That's better, right? And then it's too bright, so we're gonna just layer over it. It's already a bit better, right? Yep. This also spot here is too bright. And same with up here. And in general, highlights are pretty minimal. Of course, this is also too light. So you see, it's like I'm pushing back, I'm pushing forward, I'm pushing back, I'm pushing forward. I'm finding my way. So yeah. But you know, one thing that I'm gonna do that is not in the picture is just give a bright highlight around one side. What does this do? Well, I like to think that it just makes things pop a little bit more. It doesn't look realistic, it's more of a style thing. You can also try these in some of your portraits, and you'll probably see me doing this more if you watch me any more than this video. I like that when we have something like that. So I think I'm gonna stop there because I can probably keep pushing this more and more, but ultimately I don't I don't think it's gonna get so much more interesting. I think this is it. So I'm just gonna peel off satisfying. And I should be careful. I just peeled off a little bit of paper. That's okay. We will probably not frame this masterpiece that I've made. But if I do end up sending it to somebody who owns the dog, they want to keep it, they can just frame it or trim it. It's up to them. But you know what? Like, you got to take care of your art, but at the same time, don't worry too much. Like, this is not a masterpiece. It's for fun. It's a practice. So there it is. A little doggy. And of course, if you are proud of it, or even if you're not, just give it a little date and a signature. And I would sign at the bottom right if I can. And just say a date. Like today is the 6th month, 12th day, 2024. So that's it. So I hope you guys enjoyed that and learned something. So yeah, stick with it for next time and keep on making art. Thanks for watching this far and hope to see you again next time.